Alright guys, I love my new XJ. I really do. It's fun to drive. It's in pretty good shape for the age and the price I paid. But I've got an issue. Can you tell what the main issue with this thing is right now? I can't remember if it was like this before I loaded up my tools in the back, but it certainly is now. The back is sagging a lot compared to the front. Up in the front, compared to in the back, there's literally like nothing, you know? So I'd say I've got about 3 inches maybe that I got to make up. And if you look underneath here, I think you guys can maybe see, I mean my leaf spring is actually bending the wrong way. It's got negative curve relative to what it should have. So what I would love to do is just put a block in to lift that up, but that's really not going to solve my problem. All right, a block goes in between, oh man, we go down here in between the spring perch and the spring, and that lifts it up, and that's one way to lift the vehicle. But what I really need to do is add a leaf to this thing, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I went and got these leaves today, these real beefy leaves out of a like a late 90s Chevy Blazer, and I got 3. I got the bottom 3 leaves. So I got the straight one, and then this one, which is kind of small, and then this one that has the clamp on it. I really just want to stiffen up what I have there to keep the natural curve it's supposed to have, and obviously level it out. Because it's like this before I even put anything. You know, I do at some point plan to trailer with this thing, so gonna need to find something to do. That's my project for today. These springs were 29 bucks for, you know, it's obviously two sets, $29 total. I'm gonna go out and get new U-bolts and get a new center bolt, and I'm hoping that I really would love to do it with just that. I don't want to make this an expensive project. I don't feel like making it a long project. So alright, here's a quick flashback to the donor vehicle. It's your pretty average early 2000s S10 Blazer. We looked for a donor vehicle that didn't have a ton of rust, no sign that these springs had been abused. There's not a lot you can do to springs. You know, they're either horribly disfigured or they're fine. The main reason I'm showing you this is to share a quick tip with you. So we were out in the yard this day, and we did not have Eric's impact gun that we usually have, the big one. I was out getting warranty work done, and these U-bolts, these half-inch U-bolts on this Chevy were crazy rusted. I mean, they were welded solid basically, so I couldn't break them with the breaker bar I had, and the only gun we had was a real little one. So what we did was we cut the brake line right there and dripped brake fluid onto the rusty nuts of these U-bolts. And what that did was it acted like penetrating oil. Brake fluid has very small molecules, which is able to creep in between the rusty nut and the rusty bolt, same way PB Blaster would. And the great thing about this tip is you always have brake fluid somewhere. I mean, even if you just dip into your reservoir in your car, you have a little bit of brake fluid to spare. So this trick is good no matter where you are at all times. If you need to break a bolt, if you don't have PB Blaster. What you're looking at here is we wanted to get the whole spring pack, but the top spring was rusted in. We couldn't get it loose with what we had. We had Eric's small little gun right there, but not the big one. So we ended up just taking the leaf pack apart and taking the bottom 3 springs, which I was initially disappointed about, but I got more than enough lift just using that middle spring there. I think that if you were to use all 3 of these springs and alternate them, you could probably get 4 inches plus of lift, especially with that second to last one there. Alright, here we go. You can see I've got the Jeep up on some jack stands, supported the body. Right now I have the axle up on the jack. What I'm going to do is loosen up these U-bolt bolts and then slowly drop it down onto those jack stands right here. The thing to be careful of is brake line. You don't want to let it down so far that it hangs on the brake line, which will break, or hangs on these shocks. Now my shocks are like super shot, but that's going to be a project for another day, as are these sway bar links, but again, project for another day. Today I just want to fix, you can really see it now, like this leaf spring is, it's like straight. I mean, it's not, it's terrifying actually. We got a bunch of stuff disconnected now. took off the sway bar link, which I have just bungeed up out of the way. We took off the shocks, which I really need to replace. You can see both are soaking wet and rotted. But that's, I have some new ones in the garage. That's a project for another weekend, not right now. Mostly because the bolts up there are really shot, so it's gonna be a project. Anyway, one thing at a time. Leaf springs right now. I think I'm gonna cut off these two clamps and try to get this very rusted center pin out. It's gonna be a fight. I'm gonna have to grind that out, but it's okay. Yeah, I'm gonna do that, so then we'll be left with just this main leaf, you know, the one that connects to the Jeep. The other ones will drop down and we can figure out how we want to sandwich in new ones. Alright, just real quick, before I start cutting anything, I'm gonna put two C-clamps nice and tight on this spring pack, so that as I'm cutting, these things aren't trying to bounce apart. I can keep everything the way, you know, the way it is until I'm ready to take it apart. I would highly recommend doing that before. Like I said, I'm gonna cut off right here, right there, and grind out this center pin. Okay, I was able to grind away that center bolt. If you ever have to grind near your gas tank, put something up, you know what I mean? This is like an old piece of heat shield. You don't want to just be throwing sparks. Like, I had no choice, you know, the way the angle was, I had no choice but to throw sparks directly at my gas tank. Don't just, it's a plastic gas tank, like, use your head, you know what I mean? Anyway, so that popped out real easy. I'm gonna use a center punch to pop that guy right out of there. Just to compare, this is the bottom spring from the XJ, what I just pulled out of it. And this is the bottom spring from the Blazer. I mean, you can see the Blazer springs are beefy, so that's where your improved ride height's going to come from, and that's where your stiffer suspension's going to come from. All the springs from the XJ are this size, all the ones from the Blazer are this size. Alrighty, I've been staring at these flat springs, these big springs, and I think I've settled on what I want to do. I think I want to take the second largest spring I have and cut off the ends here and here, and then put it underneath these two springs from the XJ. So it'll be sitting about like there, and then put the XJ's original flat spring, wherever that is, somewhere around here, underneath the whole thing. I think that'll be the best bet for ride quality, and you know, still give me enough lift to level things out a little bit. Alright, so I'm gonna cut those, and then we'll see how that's all looking. Alright, here's what the coil pack's gonna look like. It's important to note that these center holes are not equidistant from both sides. So you really want to make sure that you remember which way you took each one of these apart, and then when you put your new one in, you want it to have the same dimensions. So you'll notice this side is longer than this side, and when they stack up, alright, you can see that they seem to have the same dimensions on each side, which is important. Alright. As far as getting the leaf back in, you know, and reattached to this main leaf, it is a bit of a struggle. I recommend you get it all assembled with the cross pin in it outside of the vehicle. Then get it up underneath this main one, and you just kind of have to squeeze it. The C-clamp is what's holding it in right now. It's just a bit of a struggle, but having the cross pin in, or you know, in the beginning helps. I can't imagine trying to line up each leaf and then squeeze them and put the cross pin in. I don't think that would be the best way to do it. Once you got that, I'm literally going to take the nut here and just use the impact to kind of draw everything in. I've got my where is it, my little boss stitch guy right here, which I think will be just enough to pull this leaf together. Let's see. Yeah, so zip those all together. That center bolt is plenty strong to pull those leaves in. You shouldn't have any problem there. As you're going, take your BFH and line everything up, tap it into place. It's much easier now than when the springs are fully compressed later. Alrighty, we got one side sorta, kinda, almost done. What we had to do was drill out the XJ springs, which are this one, this one, this one, and this one. So the top three and the bottom one spring are all XJ springs. This fat one right here, second from the bottom, is the Chevy spring, which I cut the ends off so that it would be about where it needed to be. And then I had to drill out the XJ springs because the center bolt I got was larger and the center bolt hole in the Chevy spring was larger. So I drilled it out to 7/16, no, something like that. Yeah, 7/16 was the size of this. So what I'm gonna do now is get the clamp off the Chevys to use here so that these will be clamped together, and then I'm gonna do the other side, and then we get to fight with the axle to get it back in. I won't lie, this first one took a long time, and I was seriously regretting even bothering breaking into this, but now that I know what I'm doing, I think it's gonna go a lot quicker. Alrighty, once you are sure that you have this tightened down, you can go ahead and lop off the majority of this cross pin. You don't need it all up there. Alright, for lining everything back up, getting the U-bolts back in there, you may have to get a jack under the front of your differential up here by the yoke. If your angles are wrong, you might be able to have a buddy twist it for you. I think it's definitely easier to put it all together without the sway bar link on, and then just take off these two bolts to slip it in. Once you know your center pin's lined up, everything up here is torqued down, then you undo it and just add that on. Here's a little tip for getting your bottom shocks back on without beating the heck out of everything. Take about a 17 mil socket and put it right on there. And then give it some good taps with your hammer. That way you're not banging on the bushing and you're not banging against the stud. And you can just work it all the way on like that until you have enough threads showing to get your nut on. And then you just tighten it down with a wrench. Alrighty, I was looking for a spring clamp option, and I'm gonna go buy some new ones for the back that'll wrap right around there and be nice and secure, but I want to repurpose these S10 Blazer ones for the front so that I can drive this thing, you know, until then just a little bit. So I cut off the one side. This was originally essentially welded to the, what was it? The main spring, the second spring on the S10. What I'm going to do is slip this over, get it over the first three. So from these sides will be working to keep you know, these springs from moving sideways, and I'm just going to weld it right through the middle there, right to this top spring. I don't see any problem with doing that, and that'll keep these springs from wandering out or that way. And then, like I said, I'll get something for the back right here, probably one that goes right around here and clamps in nice and tight, and then that'll be good to go. Be real good to go. I'm excited about it. So I'm just going to clean up the inside of this hole. I'm going to clean up a nice patch right there. Just tack it real quick. And I don't know if you noticed, but sway bars are on. Horrible blown leaking shocks are back on because today was not shock day. That'll be a project for next time. So as soon as I get this done, I put wheels on it and we get to see what the ride height is. Alrighty, we got that spring clamp on there. Pretty happy with it. It's burned right onto that top leaf there. I do want to get some ones for the back. Before I put this thing on the ground, let's talk pitfalls. I admit, when I conceived this project, it seemed a little easier in my head. It did turn out alright. If you are doing this to add lift to your vehicle, you're going to need new shocks, and way more important, you're going to need a new brake line, alright? I'm really thinking that this only gave me about 2 inches, which will level me out. And I don't off-road this thing, so it's not getting flexed, so this brake line should be fine. But this right here will very quickly flex out and break if you're doing this for lift. You're gonna need new shocks. You may need new sway bar links if you're doing this for lift. All right, other things you may wanna do while you're in here. You got bushings back there. You got sway bar bushings. Alright, that's all stuff that while you've got it apart you may want to do. I kind of just wanted to bang this project out, so I did not do that. Figure out something for spring clamps. If you are pulling from a donor vehicle, I think the vehicles that work for this are pretty much any Chevy S10 or Blazer. That's my understanding, and any Dodge Dakota. I don't know if like a Ford Ranger would work. I don't necessarily know why it wouldn't, but I have never heard anyone using Ranger springs. Make sure you have a lot of jack stands. You're going to need at least the 2 under the vehicle, you know, under the frame rails, and then at least 2 for underneath here. Another jack is useful. I pulled out my little one to jack up the front there. Grab a buddy. I always do this stuff alone and I always regret it. Yeah, I mean, let's get this thing on the ground and see just how much lift we're talking about. Alright, like I said, I was not doing this to lift this vehicle, so my results are not that impressive if you're judging this against a lifted vehicle. What I wanted to do was level this vehicle. I wanted the front and the back to be the same, and in fact I wanted the back to still remain a little bit compressed when my tools were in there, so that when I take my tools out I'm not overextending my shocks and my brake line, and I was able to achieve that really well. The before and afters are very impressive and exactly what I was looking for, but you do have the option to go larger with more leaves. Alright, let's close this thing up. Just took it for a test drive and it rides fine. After having that much apart back there, after you drive a little bit, I would say take it around the block, then come back and check all the bolts, and then after 50 miles check all the bolts again. You don't want anything U-bolts loosening up. Always do that with lugs every time you have them off. Also, considering how much you're working around all the hard lines for the brakes back there, I would suggest you keep an eye out for brake leaks after you've done this. You got your, the U-bolt on these things actually goes like in between the axle and the brake line, and a bunch of other places where you could tweak it and not even realize. So keep an eye out for that. I just did that. I gave it a good whip around the block, checked everything, no brake leaks, everything's still nice and tight. So yeah, I would say this was totally a success. I paid $29 for the leaf springs, paid $8 for the center pins. I bought these new U-bolts for like 20 bucks, but I ended up not needing them. The other ones had plenty of thread left. So what does that bring us to? Like not even 40 bucks to level this thing out. So that's pretty good. And I still have a bunch of leaves there. If I decide to go bigger, I may put those flat ones in at some point. This leveled it out. I wouldn't mind having that little like 1/4 inch extra. That's more than a 1/4 inch. I don't know what that is, but probably 5/16. I wouldn't mind having that, honestly. Yeah, so here we go. I'm gonna close this video out now. If you guys found this helpful, if you found it enjoyable at all, and I hope you did, by all means, go down bottom, leave me a comment, let me know. If you got any questions, let me know. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Here's a little public service announcement real quick. Get the right bit for the project you are working on. Alright, I do this every time I have to drill through metal. I just grab whatever bit I have. This was a woodworking bit. This was cheap. You need carbide or something. I was drilling through that leaf spring. It caught just before it busted through the other side, and this thing just exploded, alright? So invest the money. Get the right tools for the job, you know?